Welcome back into yet another episode of Top Shelf presented by Enterprise. Big trips, sudden detours, or last-minute plans, whatever it is, we're here for it. I'm your host, Levi Smith, joined by my hockey experts, John Matisz, Josh Wegman, and we're bringing you guys a special installment of Top Shelf today because we're not really doing a roundtable conversation or anything. We have curated our own personal list of the top 10 most impactful trades in the NHL since the year 2000. We're more than halfway into the NHL season, which means that March 6th trade deadline is coming up. So with that being on one hand, and the fact that we are officially through the first 25 years of the 2000 century, what better time to go back and look at the last 25 years and discuss some of the biggest league-altering deals that have been made since the year 2000. So I'm excited to get into this. And first and foremost, before we do, let me highlight a couple of the honorable mentions because we couldn't put every trade in here. Sorry, Seth Jones for Ryan Johansson. Could not make our list.
It's a fun one, though.
It was a fun one, but I've got 5 quick honorable mentions before we get to our top 10. Rod Brind'Amour to Carolina was obviously a big deal. He's been coaching there forever. Chris Kunitz to Pittsburgh for Ryan Whitney. Who could forget? Whit Dog going out and never getting a cup. Sorry, Whit.
Sorry, Whit.
I've got Tuukka Rask to Boston. Underrated deal.
Not to Leafs fans. They've been rating it very highly in a bad way.
They did not forget about that one. Phil Kessel to Pittsburgh is on here. Obviously went and got a couple cups. And Taylor Hall for Adam Larson. I've got the Taylor Hall for Adam Larson deal down.
1 for 1 trade.
1 for 1. The Devils get an instant MVP, which is crazy, but still, those 5 are all like league altering, and that's what we're kind of here to pinpoint. So let's get into the top 10 list, starting off with number 10. And this is a very recent one. December 12th, 2025, the Vancouver Canucks trade Quinn Hughes to the Minnesota Wild for Zeev Buium, Marco Rossi, Liam Ogren, and a 2026 first-round pick. We're starting off with the most recent massive trade that's gone down in NHL history. Josh, kick it off for us.
I think if we make this list another 10 years from now, we could look back and see this being much higher.
Yes.
I think we have it number 10 because we don't know the full impact of it yet. Does Minnesota make any noise in the playoffs over the next 2 years? Do Rossi and Buium and Ogren and that first-round pick, do they sort of become anything in Vancouver and help turn the tide there? So I'd be interested to look back 5-10 years from now and see where this would rank then, because I think there's a lot of things that could change here.
I mean, even a year from now, if Minnesota happens to win the Cup or even goes to the conference final this year, and it's just so undeniable that Quinn Hughes is this core member and he's probably going to resign, we probably move this up to 8, 7, 6, somewhere around there, right? It's already a booming success in terms of the 55% expected goals rate of 5-on-5. When Quinn's on the ice, they've outscored the opposition 23-16. So things are going well. And
Not so much for Vancouver, though.
Yeah, I was going to say there is the Vancouver of it all, which, when you trade for futures,
these guys are all still really young,
see.
and we're waiting for them to kind of take off in a few years.
But just a blockbuster in every sense of the word, and there was obviously a lot of buzz around the Devils, so there's a part of it where it's the league perspective of teams that missed out, Minnesota kind of coming out of left field, and also being a team historically that doesn't make big moves. I mean, Kaprizov re-signing was sort of the biggest move in franchise history. A couple months later, they're like, let's go get Quinn Hughes, and they did.
I'm trying to sit here and think of a way that, 10 years from now, this wouldn't be in our top 10. I think the only way I can wrap my head around that is if the Wild don't do much in the playoffs, and after next season, he goes to the Devils. I think that's probably, but even still, a Norris winning the second best defenseman hands down in the league, getting moved at any point is a massive deal, and obviously we're gonna see that a little bit more down this list. So I do think it's crazy that we can sit here and over the last 25 years we have a trade that happened a month ago already into this list. So
I mean this trade has a high floor, I would say.
Yes.
Obviously a high ceiling too, but for it to get knocked out of the top 10, I feel like is.
I don't
would
really
take a lot.
I don't think it's really a possibility. So
if it does, I'm all for it though, because that means we're getting even bigger trades.
Yes,
that's true. Good point.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is worth noting. It's funny doing this exercise with NHL versus NBA. You could probably highlight 10 players that are maybe bigger than most of the guys on this list that have been dealt in the last 3 months. Like the NHL is such a unique league where when trades of this magnitude happen, they generally have a monster impact.
Well, as we're going to see in this list, not to tease it too much, but there's a gap in time here where there weren't a lot of big trades because the cap was so flat and things were just kind of weird and teams were very conservative. And so we're back to a spot, luckily, fortunately, where teams are willing to make these big splashes because there's more cap room. Yeah. And I feel like it's more a star-driven league now, too, where teams are more, more likely to get really excited about a potential star being available and throwing all their chips into the middle of the table. So that's something to consider here, too, where there's as people will see, there's a gap where not much happens.
It's almost 10 years, I think.
Yeah.
It's a monster gap. Well, I'll tell you, there isn't a gap here between 10 and 9 because the 9th most impactful trade that we've got on our list in the last 25 years. January 24th, 2025. Our second trade of 2025 already on this list. The Colorado Avalanche trade Mikko Rantanen to Carolina for Marty Necas, Jack Drury, a 2025 second-round pick, and a 2026 fourth-round pick.
Yeah, and this trade was one of 2 Rantanen trades, right?
Yes.
So we chose this one because it was the first domino. It was similar to Quinn Hughes where although it wasn't, improbable, although it was probably maybe sort of kind of going to happen, the fact that it got across the finish line was still pretty shocking. And the fact that also Colorado, they were negotiating with Mikko Rantanen, thought, okay, the number that he wants is too high. We're going to move off this core piece. This guy who's been part of the Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar, Gabriel Landeskog, Jared Bednar core. We're removing one of those guys.
Yeah.
Like a very ballsy move.
Yeah.
And then, he ends up in Dallas. So there's a lot of sort of moving parts here. There's also Chicago involved as a team that facilitated the salary. And Taylor Hall ends up in Carolina. So a lot going on here. But at the end of the day, Colorado made a decision last year that they were going to essentially retool on the fly. And over the last 14 months, they've turned over a third of their roster.
I think it's working.
And now they're a super juggernaut or whatever we want to call them at this point in the season. So just substantial on so many levels. And the best part is that last postseason, we've got Dallas versus Colorado, where Rantanen ended up, Dallas, and he just owns them. He dunks on them in a playoff series. Yeah. And so the drama and the sort of storybook part of it is off the charts.
Yeah, I'm glad we went with the first of 2 Rantanen trades because I remember working the desk, like the Score news desk, that night and just being stunned by this trade. I know there were some rumors like maybe he could get moved, but I don't think anyone really believed it. I didn't really believe it. I thought Colorado and Rantanen would always sort of figure things out. And yeah, it's just absolutely blew me away seeing him get dealt to Carolina for this package too. And then you were talking about too they didn't want to pay Rantanen more than 12. I think that was the rumor, but then they ended up paying Necas 11 and a half. So that's funny how that worked out.
He is younger. Like I don't think he's a better player than Rantanen.
And they got him cheap this year while they're the best team in hockey by far. And if they win a cup with him making $6 million, then that proves to be a win. I think.
So like the timing of it, the like sort of like how the guys slot in plays a part where Rantanen is now making a bunch of money. Necas is still on a good deal. Necas is younger. He's obviously found great chemistry with McKinnon, which they didn't know at the time, but I think you could kind of look at the tape and imagine that. But super fascinating because Carolina assumes that he's going to come in and it's going to be this fantastic trade, put them over the top. Couple months in, Rantanen's not feeling it, the team's not feeling it. Okay, let's flip him, which was pretty risky. And, I guess you could still argue with that mentality in terms of keep him for the playoff run, even if he's not going to stay, or trade him. But, yeah, it's super fascinating where Carolina makes this trade and then they recoup assets. Yeah. And then, now are they going to make another trade this year that really blows us away?
It was such an interesting predicament for kind of the league to be in, and especially as a fan, because I watch a perennial powerhouse like the Avs lose one of their best players. Obviously, for guys like Necas is obviously awesome, but not as good. So I'm like, how are they going to get any better? Like, what happened there? Then you see Carolina, who also like had the roster to really compete already, kind of blow it all up and acquire a guy like this, then trade off of a guy like this. It was the strangest couple months there where you have these teams who on paper do exactly what they need to win.
Yes.
And they still opted to kind of switch everything around. Obviously, it made more sense for Colorado because they might not get him for anything, which we saw with like Mitch Marner. The Leafs didn't blow it up at that moment, but it was such a crazy time in the NHL to see contenders doing stuff like this. Because normally you see, you know, I don't want to spoil too much. You see a bad team trade off a really good player, and it's like, okay, well, they're going into rebuild. Both of these teams were still trying to win the cup that year. So
I don't know if I've ever seen a team do what Carolina did, where you spend all these assets to get a star player and then trade them away before the deadline again. And we may never see it again. I
think for that reason alone, this trade, again, I think it'll continue to be in a top 10 list for years to come, because of kind of the toll it took on all of the teams involved in it. It was incredible. On to number 8 on our list. September 13th, 2018. We're out of the year 2025 here. The Ottawa Senators trade their franchise cornerstone, Erik Karlsson, and let's not forget Francis Perron, to the San Jose Sharks for Josh Norris, Chris Cherney, Rudolph Balcers, Dylan DeMello, a 2020 first-round pick who turned into Tim Stützle, 2019 second-round pick Jamieson Reese, and a 2021 second-round pick who is Zach Ostapchuk. Monster trade. Monster.
7 pieces.
That's so many pieces.
So many pieces in that trade. That was a mouthful to get out there. But yeah, Erik Karlsson, who at the time was 28 years old, in his prime, a 6-time All-Star, a Norris winner. And I think something important to note that I want to put in this list of accolades here of his time in the Senators, had played 70 or more games the last 5 years before he got dealt. He played 82 for 3 straight years, and I think he had like 71, 72-ish. The Sens at the time were just a year removed from going to double overtime in Game 7 in the Eastern Conference Finals and losing to the eventual champs in Pittsburgh when it was Kunitz, I think, had the overtime winner.
Yes.
They were right there.
I mean, that was like so Karlsson and Craig Anderson fueled, but
God.
they were there.
They were right there. And lo and behold, after this deal, they missed the playoffs every single year until last year when they played the Leafs. So not a huge shocker. I think the other interesting part, though, of this aspect is the Sharks side, because they had just been to a cup themselves. They now pair 2 Norris defensemen together, which has rarely been done in NHL history, with Brent Burns and Erik Karlsson. They made the playoffs that following season and have not been back since. And Erik Karlsson played 56 or less games in his first 4 years in San Jose. I think he had the 82-game Norris campaign in his final year there. Then he's gone. So is this in considering a 28-year-old prime Erik Karlsson being on the move, is this a lose-lose?
I don't think it's a lose-lose.
The Sens did get Stützle.
Yeah, I mean, Stützle's like a key building block. I think Doug Wilson, the GM of the Sharks at the time, if he had one do-over, it would be protecting that first-round pick that ended up being Stützle. Yeah. But, I mean, Sharks were such a powerhouse at the time, so he kind of just assumed, hey, we're going to keep making the playoffs forever. And then, obviously, they make the playoffs in that first year with Karlsson, and then the wheels come off after that. So, I got a what-if scenario, though.
Okay.
If San Jose doesn't trade that pick or protects it and ends up drafting Stützle, are they good enough to not bottom out for Macklin Celebrini? Right. Does that change the course
I think it does.
of NHL
I think
history?
it does,
yeah,
absolutely.
no, I think you're right.
Stützle's that good. That
maybe
they're not as terrible as they
being...
were for a few years there.
Yeah. So
but yeah, like Ottawa gets Stützle out of this, obviously. Norris, they turn into Dylan Cousins from another trade. Dylan DeMello, they trade to Winnipeg, get a 3rd rounder. That becomes Marilainen, one of their goalies right now. And then Ostapchuk is also in Ottawa's lineup. So technically they got 4 guys for Karlsson and Mr. Perron there, which is like pretty good. But if you remove Stützle's star quality, it's like you got, not much. So it is really interesting, though, that Levi, you bring up sort of like how neither team has really gone off on,
at all.
Some big run or something. Yeah. And also the other part of this is where the Senators were at that moment in time reminds me a bit of the Canucks and Quinn Hughes, where there's ownership issues. There's sort of like a weird toxic vibe around the team. These are guys in their prime. Why are you trading them? And then obviously in Ottawa's case, Mark Stone's gone. Who else did they trade from that core?
Yeah, I was looking at it.
There was Mark a whole crew.
Mike Hoffman.
Like they just see you later. Like it just everything sort of started falling apart.
This Karlsson trade too, it really dragged on because the whole offseason, the expectation was, are they going to trade this guy? And I just remember like being on the desk all summer, like, is this the day we get a Karlsson trade? And no, it doesn't happen until September, right before training camp. So yeah, it was wild.
Monster deal. But again, like at the time, I don't know if he was fresh off of Norris, but probably arguably the best defenseman in the league still when that trade happened. Again, you just don't see it very often, especially for a Canadian franchise too, like the Senators, to have to move off from a guy like that. League altering, only way to put it. On to 7th on the list, June 23rd, 2006. Turning back the clock a bit now. The Florida Panthers trade Roberto Luongo, Lucas Krejcik, and a 2006 6th-round pick to the Vancouver Canucks for Todd Bertuzzi, Brian Allen, and Alex Auld. Tell us about it, Josh.
Man, the Canucks definitely don't go to that cup without Luongo, right?
No.
I know Corey Schneider ended up being good, but this really, I think, turned the page for the Canucks and made them into like a legit contender.
Yeah.
And even before they got really good, Luongo carried them for a lot of years. And just for Florida's perspective, looking back, it's like, how did you not get more for the best goalie in the league?
Yeah.
And he's like 25 years old at the time of this trade, too. But Bertuzzi at the time was coming off a 70-point season, only played, I think, 7 games for Florida before they flipped him. Allen was a former, high pick, big minute munching D, but never really panned out the way many expected. And then Alex Auld, career backup. So I'm left wondering, like, how did you not try and get picks for this? Maybe it's hindsight, but
Yeah, I wonder if they were hoping that a change of scenery with Todd Bertuzzi would really benefit him, because he had the Steve Moore incident where he got suspended for a long time, and that really, put him in a dark place in terms of like his trajectory. He was a pretty dominant power forward in his prime, and then he goes to Florida and does very little and then is gone. So rough trade for the Panthers, but I do feel like it's kind of an interesting turning point in Luongo's career where he becomes a franchise icon for 2 organizations, and that obviously never happens if he doesn't go to Vancouver here. If he stays in Florida the whole time, where we don't think of him in quite the same way, especially because, like you said, they went to the Cup final. So, this is a Hall of Famer, a guy who's still associated with the Panthers too. Super interesting trade, and one that's a little strange to look back on, given pretty underwhelming return for the Panthers.
Seriously.
here's another little wrinkle what if part of this trade. If Roberto Luongo never goes to Vancouver, is he as comfortable as he is for Canada during the 2010 Olympics, playing in his home building, all the Lou chants?
Yeah.
Like maybe, one goal would have been the difference in that game, so who knows? Just,
If Roberto Luongo doesn't go to the Canucks, does Sidney
we get the
Crosby
golden
score
goal?
the golden goal? It's an interesting wrinkle.
Sliding doors moment.
Yeah, I'm glad that we've got that 7th on the list then. It's there for a reason. It's Roberto Luongo trade / Canada gold medal.
There you go.
But no, that was, a goalie like that, like to just acquire in a trade that's headlined.
It's hard to trade goalies.
Yes.
Period.
In hindsight, it's easy to say, that's headlined by a package that's Todd Bertuzzi. I know, yes, he was actually really good at one point in his career around when this happened, but still, it's all-time stuff from the Canucks, so very nicely done. Was that Brian Burke still? Had to have been, right?
I feel like it was.
I want to say it was...
was it Gillis?
Gillis, maybe? But I'm not sure.
Regardless.
I think it was Gillis, yeah.
Great trade. All right, on to number 6 on the list. February 21st, 2001. The Los Angeles Kings trade Rob Blake and Steven Reinprecht, did I get that right?
Yep.
To the Colorado Avalanche for Adam Demarche, Aaron Miller, Jared Allen, a 2001 first-round pick who became David Steckel, and a 2003 first-round pick who became Brian Boyle. Yes, that Brian Boyle. Monster deal here, and there's a little bit of a caveat to this one, right?
Yeah, it was one of those weird trades where, and it doesn't happen as much now, where it's like future considerations or player to be named later.
Yeah.
But, with what happened here in terms of Blake coming to Colorado, this happens in February, correct? They win the Cup later that year.
Yes.
He's paired with Ray Bourque, who had arrived in Colorado the previous season, and those two guys played for Canada at the 1998 Olympics in Nagano. So there was already a familiarity there, and they were 2 studs on the back end. Bourque was 40 years old, so he wasn't
Still
quite...
a stud, though.
Still a stud, still an all-timer, and they had Adam Foote as their shutdown guy, like just a...
What a decor.
Unbelievable blue line. Up front, Joe Sakic, Peter Forsberg, Milan Hajduk, Alex Tanguay, Chris Drury, and then you've got Patrick Waugh and net. Like,
just
you look
Hall of
back on
Famers
that
every
team,
level of the ice. It's crazy.
And this is like classic pre-salary cap era where Detroit and Colorado just every deadline they're like, let's grab the best veterans.
You grab a Hall of Famer.
Pretty much. So interesting from that perspective, and I don't think, the Avs win the Cup without Blake. Like, he was such a dominant force as, like, this physical specimen and just a guy who could bully in front of the net.
The Rob Blake hip checks are so iconic.
And, like, the slap shot. Like, he's really, truly, like, a very much a a player of that time. And just one last note with regards to this trade in terms of like the players involved. Adam Deadmarsh, like he jumps out at me as like a classic 1990s, early 2000s player where, no visor, he's got, kind of like missing teeth. He's a grinder,
He can score though. He's a good player.
Yeah, like good player,
goals,
kind of heart and soul guy. And then his, career unfortunately ends early because of concussions, which again, as unfortunate as it is, that's kind of like a mark of the era where guys were getting in all these fights or a bunch of headshots. So pretty good player, but at the end of the day, that Kings return is not ideal.
I think with Deadmarsh, like he still had one good year for the Kings. People forget he was pretty young. He was like 25 years old, I think, roughly at the time of this trade. So he was a pretty key building block, and for him to have his career end like shortly after that is very unfortunate for the Kings and for him, obviously. But fun fact about Adam Deadmarsh, he had his name spelled wrong on the Stanley Cup.
Oh,
because he won with the Avs in '96, and it was spelled Deadmarch, like CH instead of SH.
That's a tough bounce.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
I can't imagine he had another chance to put his name back.
I wonder now that so much time has
I
passed.
think they
if he thinks
fixed
it's
it.
funny.
I think they eventually fixed it. But
Yeah.
really?
Yeah. But
Like I'd be pissed in the moment, but like it's kind of a good
kinda
story
funny. Yeah.
afterwards. Like
You
I'm
do
one
have-
of 3 players to have their name spelled wrong in history, kind of thing.
Cup caveat. That is crazy, but no, that was a big deal, and obviously it really helped the Avs continue to win. So you don't see guys like that going around too often. We're now into the top 5 most impactful trades of the last 25 years, and that begins on November 4th, 2021. When the Buffalo Sabres traded Jack Eichel, a 2023 third-round pick that became Matthew Cadford, to the Vegas Golden Knights for Alex Tuch, Peyton Krebs, first-round pick that became Noah Ostlund, and a 2023 second-round pick, Riley Height.
And he's been traded.
He's been traded
for
since
Greenway, Jordan
Yeah.
Greenway.
Yes.
Well, sorry, he
So,
wasn't
part of
traded,
that
but the
trade.
pick was traded.
Yeah.
The pick was
Yeah.
traded. Yes. He didn't go to Buffalo.
No.
Yeah, this was a big time deal. This was prime Jack Eichel, one of the biggest and best power forwards to begin his career, and then he had a lot of issues with Buffalo, and they bring in Kevin Adams, and this is like the first deal he does. He deals off their
franchise player.
franchise
really.
player,
Second overall.
captain,
yeah.
who was restless there, who did not want to be there anymore. There was speculation for so long. It was one of the first times in a while that we saw a truly disgruntled player want out.
Yes. Get his
and
way.
Get his way, and I don't know if there's a more formidable team to have that gripe with than the Buffalo Sabres, who are still amidst one of the longest droughts, playoff droughts in sports. I think
They have the NHL record.
They have the
right now.
NHL record.
14 seasons.
I can't. I think that
They might break it
have
this year.
the all-time record, or sorry, an all sports record right
Yeah.
now.
Might
Be. New York Jets are close.
The Jets are close. Yes, you're right. It's one of those two teams, but. Yeah, and the return, honestly, for dealing a guy like this, I mean, Alex Tuch has been there this whole time. He's been solid. Peyton Krebs, not too much, but Ostlund's been okay.
Yep.
Like, it's not the worst, it's not the best, but teams kind of got a first glance at what it looks like to trade a guy who wants out, because at that point you're kind of handcuffed. You don't have a ton of packages. We didn't really see that, honestly. I was gonna say we kind of saw it with Quinn Hughes, but they got a boatload for Quinn Hughes. But certainly an interesting predicament. And on the other side for Vegas, who they're a couple years removed from their inaugural season, going all the way to the Cup, instantly coming to the league a couple pieces away. They happen to bring in a guy named Jack Eichel, who then goes on and carries them to a cup. He's been incredible ever since, one of the best players in hockey. Really, I know that they started so hot, but this deal is such a big deal to me because it really catapulted, this new franchise instantly into like kind of legendary status with how quickly that they got to a cup and won it. And they haven't really looked back since. I mean, this team's been a powerhouse ever since. On the back of Jack Eichel, they bring in Mark Stone, they got Mitch Marner. Like, it all starts.
All they do
with
is go after every big name.
Yeah,
Thomas Earl.
and it all starts with this trade. I mean, what a risk for the Golden Knights to take, and boy, has it ever paid off. Really, really, really big deal of a trade to me.
Yeah, you bring up the risk because the sort of last straw in Buffalo was this argument between Eichel and his camp and ownership and management over his neck surgery. And it was this experimental thing, and Eichel was, steadfast. Hey, I want to do this. This is my body. let me do this.
Yes.
Sabres said, this seems risky. We don't want you to do this. Obviously, history has sided with Eichel. Yeah. And he goes to Vegas and turns into a two-way monster. Like, he was...
Reinvents himself.
And, part of it is sort of like, is it coaching in terms of Bruce Cassidy? Is it just environment, being around quote-unquote winners? Does that bring out the best in you? That's probably part of it. But also, Eichel put in the work to be a better player once he got to Vegas.
And, we are the furthest thing from medical professionals at this desk, but I'll still never understand why the Sabres just wouldn't let him have this preferred surgery. I know it was kind of new and experimental. No NHL player had it, but other athletes have at the time.
Plus, Eichel has so much to lose if he goes with something that's too risky.
And if doctors are telling you it's safe, I don't know. I just don't get why the Sabres were so scared to let him have this surgery.
Yeah, it's a pretty big fumble on their part. Although the package,
it's okay.
It's kind of how I think that's how you were. Like, it's not the worst, it's not the best. Alex Tuch's become a core piece, and they might re-sign him. Peyton Krebs is having a good season this year, but he's taken a while to get going. He's 28 now. He's been a bottom 6 guy. Noah Ostlund seems like a player in terms of at least a top 9, maybe top 6 guy long term. And then if we want to put in Jordan Greenway there instead of the second round pick, that's a bit of a bust in terms of his value to the Sabres. So not a complete disaster, but not something where you're going, I'm so glad we traded Jack Eichel if you're a Sabres fan.
I think this looks better for the Sabres over time if they extend or re-sign Alex Tuch, just being a Western New York guy too. If they can make him like a career player for the Sabres, then it looks a little better. But if they let him walk or trade him this year at the deadline, then I don't know what to make of this.
Yeah, I think what puts this into the top 5 for me is just the franchise impact on both sides of this deal had. Sure, obviously, the instant surge that the Golden Knights have, but also, the Buffalo Sabres, who might be on their way, like we said, to the longest NHL playoff drought ever, get the second overall pick. They get to draft a Jack Eichel, and all he does is lose while he's there, and they trade him. They rebuilt on a rebuild.
It was a complete breakdown of asset management, of development. Guys around Eichel, they had, and there's tweets every once in a while. Hey, here are a bunch of former Sabres in a lineup, and it's like a legit good NHL team. Yeah. So there's a lot has gone wrong in the last. They've been able to play us 14 years. Over that time, there's been so many missteps. And this is arguably the biggest. Yeah, it's kind of impact. So
it's a bit cherry on top. We're gonna talk about another one shortly here coming up on pick number 4. But it's true. I'm glad you referenced that because it's kind of the Jack Eichel trade encapsulated 3 or 4 years of awful management. You see some of the names that were in there. Brandon Montour, Sam Reinhart's, really great players. Ryan O'Reilly that they basically gave up for free.
Yeah. What a
great team. Great team. I'll tell you what, they would not have a 14-year playoff drought if they made some smarter decisions, but it is what it is. 5th most impactful trade of the last 25 years. On to number 4, July 22nd, 2022. The Calgary Flames trade Matthew Tkachuk and a 2025 4th-rounder to Florida for Jonathan Huberdeau, Mackenzie Weegar, Cole Schwindt, and a 2025 first-round pick that became Colin Potter. Monster deal.
Absolutely huge.
Wow. And, obviously, I don't think the Panthers win back-to-back cups without Matthew Tkachuk. They definitely don't go to the final the year before, too, and lose to Vegas because he was arguably going to win the Conn Smythe that year if they had won it. So just a massive, massive win for the Florida Panthers in this trade. And obviously tricky from Calgary's side because Tkachuk said he wanted out. He had 1 more year of team control, so they had to trade him. And they could only trade him where he was going to sign an extension to maximize the value. I think there's only 3 teams he gave the Flames. So tricky spot. At the time, I remember the reception being wow, Flames did pretty good getting Huberdeau, who was coming off a 100-point season, and getting Weegar, a good, stellar top 4 defenseman on a good contract. But obviously that has not panned out in Calgary, especially with Huberdeau. He signs that massive extension before even playing a game, and then just his game totally craters.
Yeah, I remember the extension for Huberdeau being very strange in terms of he was really upset by the trade, and it was almost like an FU to the Panthers, which is such a weird way to operate when you're thinking about your future. But I'm not in his skin, so who knows? Maybe I would have done the same. And the Flames offered him a lot of money, but
a lot of money to pass.
Yeah, and at the time, as much as you could have looked at Huberdeau's 100-point season and gone okay, this is his peak. a lot of Barkov influence there. Like, this guy isn't truly a superstar. But you go, he's, an 80-point player. He's, he's a first liner, and then he goes to Calgary and just has not been that in
basically half the amount of points the next year. I think he only had 50-something in his first year in Calgary. So,
and Uyghur's a really good defenseman. Like, that shouldn't be discounted here, but otherwise, tough go for Calgary. And if you look at Florida, like Bill Zito just deciding, like, I need a Matthew Tkachuk on my team to take us to the next level, and going out and getting him, and it just, working out so wonderfully, and just one of many trades for Florida. Like, Sam Bennett comes over from Calgary as well in a big trade that helps them win cups, and then Sam Reinhart from Buffalo. Those are two others that certainly could have made this list.
Absolutely.
I think with Tkachuk too, he really helped shape the identity of this Panthers team that we know them as today. Like, physical, nasty, in your face. Some people say dirty. I'm not saying dirty, but
well, even like from sorry to cut you off, but even from a leadership perspective, they talk about how Barkov is one way, Tkachuk is another, and they just balance each other out. And then you've got Maurice sort of at the top as maybe somewhere in between those two personalities. So it's also interesting from a cultural perspective off the ice how he's impacted that market.
Barkov's that stoic, like, lead by example guy, showing up the rink early every day, playing basically perfect hockey. Yeah. And then Tkachuk's kind of this, I don't want to say goofball, but like keeping things loose in the dressing room.
Kind of like a Kopitar-Doughty situation back in the day with the Kings.
Yeah, and again, like, we want to talk about impactful trades. We want to talk about legacy, kind of franchise-defining trades. I think this is the perfect one because it's the big one that the Panthers made, but these Panthers teams that have gone to 3 straight cups, that 1-2 back-to-back that we're not going to forget about, were built on, like, incredible management. That is Matthew Tkachuk, that is Sam Bennett, that is Sam Reinhart, that is, signing a guy like Carter Verhaeghe for, like, basically nothing, trading for Brad Marchand and Seth Jones. Like, this team has been built on basically not drafting. Like,
Forsling was a waiver pickup.
Forsling was a waiver pickup. Like, it was Barkov, it was Ekblad, and the rest of that team that's been so dominant is all players from other teams.
Wild.
So I think you basically just wrote Bill Zito's Hall of Fame plaque.
Yeah, that's all it takes. I mean, I didn't even say Bobrovsky yet, who they also obviously traded for, or was that a sign?
Free agent signing.
Free agent signing. Like, the whole team is comprised of other players, and I think this Tkachuk trade is the perfect thing to kind of encapsulate all of that. That's why it's 4th on our list. Into the top 3, and we begin the top 3 most impactful trades. On July 3rd, 2006, the Edmonton Oilers trade Chris Pronger to the Anaheim Ducks for a 2007 first-round pick that went to Phoenix, Nick Ross, 2008 first-round pick that became Jordan Eberle, and a 2008 second-round pick that was ended up in the Islanders' hands, Travis Hamonic, Joffrey Lupul, and Ladislas Schmid. Mega deal here for Chris Pronger. What do you got?
I'll be honest, first thing that comes to mind is, what is Nick Ross up to? We know what all the other guys in this trade are up to. Seriously. But what is Nick Ross up to? No, Chris Pronger, for a guy who's, a top 10 defenseman of all time, is that fair to say?
I think so, for sure.
Yeah. He got traded 5 times, 5 if you include he got traded to Arizona. But 4 real trades. He went from Hartford to St. Louis. Let's see if I can get this right. St. Louis to Edmonton,
Anaheim
to Anaheim to Philly.
Yeah.
Don't forget Philly to Phoenix, too.
Yeah, and then Philly to Phoenix to bring it all full
Nick
circle.
Ross effect.
Yeah, the Nick Ross effect. That's funny. But the reason why we picked Oilers is because they go on to, we pick this trade, the Ducks, is because they go on to win a cup. Obviously, the Oilers, they went to the cup final. Same with the Flyers. So he's just such a, first of all, like, just an absolute brute force out there. Oh, yeah. And also had the mobility and puck moving. Like, you could argue a one-of-one player in NHL history in terms of, like, the physical traits mixed with the skill. Like,
I mean, he carried 3 different teams to a cup final. Yeah. Like, that Edmonton team the year before this trade, they were not good at all. He absolutely
he was
put
everything
them on his
for them.
back.
And he's just he has this, sort of outspokenness and obviously, like, a dirtiness to his game.
Playing 30-plus minutes a night.
Just actually, on this Ducks run, he literally averaged 30 minutes a night, which is insane. And this Ducks run was characterized by J.S. Jaguar, right, and his big equipment and everything, and Scott Niedermayer.
And Pronger on the same line is just
nasty.
Unfair.
I love Pronger's career in terms of all the different sort of layers to it, and on top of that, him, being back in our lives as a broadcaster and as a Twitter presence. But yeah, super impactful trade, and I think it's fair to say the Ducks don't win the Cup without him.
100%. And I think one thing maybe some people forget about this trade, like what a gut punch for Edmonton, because he comes in the year before, drags them to the Cup final, and then requests a trade.
Yeah.
There was, I think, some rumors out there his wife didn't want to live in
like
Edmonton.
that. Yeah.
That was sort of the word on the street, but
Yeah.
who knows if that was the actual reason or not. But yeah, it just absolutely sucks for that Oilers fan base. You go to a final, and then the guy who brought you there wants out, and then he goes and wins a Cup in Anaheim.
Yeah, but next year. It's
And
actually insane.
I think with that return, they're trying to get pieces to help them kind of right away, like
Yes.
Lupul. And then obviously, Edmonton doesn't make the playoffs again until they get Connor McDavid. So
Yeah, yeah, it is crazy though, because seeing this package back, like it's a blending of two generations of hockey, really. Because the Edmonton Oilers move on from Chris Pronger, their Cup run is over with, obviously, and they get a pick that turns into Jordan Eberle, who starts the entire next era of Oilers hockey, where they have all those first overall picks, the Nail Yakupovs, the Taylor Halls and stuff. So it's cool to kind of see the two merge like that. Like,
and like
Pronger and
Eberle's still playing, Hamannik's still playing, Nick Ross may be playing. We don't know.
Probably.
Not in the NHL.
Knowing him.
I think we can't forget Lupul getting traded twice for Pronger in
Yes,
his career. Because when
right.
Pronger
Yes.
went from Anaheim to Philly, Lupul went from Philly to Anaheim.
Yeah, that's a great,
It's a crazy
shout.
thing to have on your resume. Got traded twice for Chris
Perfect,
Pronger.
yeah, the perfect guy. If you ever want to swing a deal for Chris Pronger, make sure Lupul's on the other
Yes,
side.
sir.
Should be no problem.
I just imagine someone like walking up, like meeting Joffrey Lupul for the first time and not knowing anything about hockey and asking about his career. Like, were you good? It's like, well, one of the best defensemen in NHL history.
Yeah.
I was traded for him
on
twice.
the other side.
Maybe not one for one, but I was in there.
It's a great point. Okay, number 2, we're sticking with the defenseman here. It's a defenseman-led theme for our second most impactful trade of the last 25 years. This was a crazy one. June 29th, 2016, the Montreal Canadiens trade P.K. Subban to the Nashville Predators for Shea-Weber, a 1-for-1 straight-up defenseman for defenseman. I want to say Norris winner for Norris winner, but it's crazy because Shea-Weber never won a Norris somehow. He was always in the running. P.K. Subban had one under his belt at this point. So many questions that came to Montreal after this happened. I mean, they draft this guy, they bring him up, he wins a Norris, he donates $10 million, which in NHL money at that time, that's no drop in the bucket. That is a
Local
monster
hospital, right? Yeah.
into the local hospital. Fan favorite, like everybody
City of
loves.
Montreal beloved this guy.
Loved P.K. Subban.
Yeah, icon.
He was
and
so
what
electric.
he meant to that fan base in that city, and they ship him off for Shea-Weber, who is no slouch himself. And the crazy part about this trade, I think, both teams made the playoffs the next year. Subban went on to be a Norris finalist again in Nashville, and both of these guys got to Cup finals with their new teams, which I don't know if we can sit here and say the Habs and the Preds, like obviously it's a huge butterfly effect, but do the Habs and Preds make the finals if they just stick it out with Subban and Weber? Who knows? Subban ends up getting, moved around a little bit more, goes to the Devils, has a couple other stops. So crazy trade. Just to see a 1-for-1 of the caliber of these two defensemen at the time. Like, these were probably, both easily top 5 guys in the league still. Just to get flipped for each other. You never see that happen. You never see one guy get moved, let alone both for each other. And especially what they meant to these fan bases. Because on the other side, you have Shea-Weber, who's the captain of the Preds, who was a little bit overlooked for sure on his way up the ranks. He didn't get drafted super high. And they build him up, and he turns into this machine of a defenseman over there. And he's so loyal to the team. He declined the offer, or the offer sheet from, they just matched it, right?
Right.
But
Yes.
still, he had other offers, like a lot to go into this, and for them to get swapped for each other, you really don't see that in any sport, to be honest.
The wild thing is that Weber had 10 years left on his deal.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
What a commitment by Mark Bergevin
in 2016.
there. Wild. Like, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, Levi, in terms of 2 top 5 defensemen essentially being traded 1-for-1. Like, it's just
We
wild.
may never see that again.
Yeah, like it's
Ever.
And like you said, neither of them won a cup with their new teams, but they still went on to like be prevalent for those franchises. It's not like I think of Subban as just a Canadian. I think of him as a Predator, and then same with Weber in Montreal. So it's a sort of crossroads moment for both guys in their career, and I feel like also the stylistic differences made this trade like very polarizing in the moment.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the discourse was, but if I were to imagine it, I'm sure stats people were pro Subban, old school people, who are maybe more interested in the nitty gritty of playing, defensive hockey, were probably pro Weber.
I remember when this first happened too, everyone's like, well, I'll take the Subban side because they're both amazing, and he's 5 years younger.
Sure.
And then for the first couple of years of that trade, it was looking like, man, what a win for Nashville.
Yeah.
Subban takes them to the Cup final the very next year. They win the President's Trophy the year after that. And then his game kind of falls off a cliff. And then Montreal, Weber just basically stays the same stud player his whole career, like doesn't really go up or down. And they go to a Cup final later on, and that's like, oh, well, Montreal won this trade. It's just funny.
And then Weber's on LTIR next thing you know,
Now he's on, where is he? San Jose, Utah? He's on,
I can't
his
remember.
contract's still in
somewhere.
San Jose
which is
would
funny
be with
enough.
Carey Price.
But also this same day, within the hour, was the Taylor Hall for Adam Larson trade, and Stamkos re-signing with Tampa Bay. Like maybe the craziest hour from a transactional perspective in hockey history.
I was gonna say easily in the last 25 years, probably in hockey history, you get guys like that moving around at that time. But I think the reason why I feel this is so impactful and absolutely deserving of second on the list is kind of what you guys talked about. The caliber defensemen these guys were, like I'm looking at the list of Norris Trophy winners. You have the Lidstroms, Chara, Duncan Keith, like Karlsson. He did get moved, actually, obviously. But a lot of guys where it's like these guys are never, and Shea-Weber should have one. These guys are never going to get moved, let alone for each other. Like these household, stable defensemen that are guys that you beg to have on your team for 20 years. It just doesn't happen. And like we said, I don't think this happens again. I think it's rightfully deserving of second on the list, only behind one trade. The most impactful, most league-altering move of the last 25 years since the year 2000. November 30th, 2005. The Boston Bruins trade Joe Thornton to San Jose for Marco Sturm, Brad Stewart, and Wayne Primo.
Jumbo Joe.
What were the Bruins thinking? Oh my goodness. This is probably easily the most lopsided trade on the list,
yes.
I think. I mean, Thornton goes on to win the Hart Trophy that season.
That year.
I believe he's the only player to win the Hart while getting traded mid-season.
Yes,
and that's, again, something that's probably never going to be matched. Just absolutely ludicrous. Becomes franchise player in San Jose. None of these guys really do much for Boston at all. I know Marco Sturm is coaching the Bruins now, which is a hilarious part of this now. Brad Stewart had a decent career, but I don't think he played in Boston very long. So just so bizarre. But then it's Boston who goes on to win the Cup first. Thornton never won a Cup. But Boston wins a few years after this. So just crazy to think about.
Yeah, and like Thornton's time in Boston was kind of fraught from the beginning. Like I remember Pat Burns, his coach when he was a rookie, was not a fan of him because of his personality, his sort of laid back nature, kind of a misunderstood guy as far as he put in the work, but then he'd be joking around in the dressing room and, obviously has this personality.
Times
that
have
is
changed,
well known.
right? Like since
that was what? I think he started after the lockout, if my memory serves.
I think he was 99 draft or something.
99.
So early 2000s.
Early 2000s, I mean, that was a whole different world in terms of hockey culture. So I think, towards the end of his Bruins tenure, whatever it was, 8 years or so, I think the organization, had just worn thin. But I know that also when he got traded, literally there was a player meeting where they approached the GM and they're like, "Did you just trade our best player?"
Yeah,
like in the middle of what we're trying to build here and trying to win a cup, and they didn't get anyone who was a star quality player back. So it is I'd love to sort of get some truth serum in front of the two GMs. Like, how does at least one like whatever, an 80-point guy not come back? They were three NHLers, but no like guys that jumped off the page.
This almost kind of reminds me of the Luka Doncic trade in the NBA last year, where it's like, how did you not shop this guy around more and create a bit of bidding? I know maybe you want to keep the rumors quiet and everything, but
come on,
how do you not create some sort of bidding war if like, hey, we will trade Joe Thornton, what can you offer us?
Was that their first and only option? It was the Sharks or nothing.
That's what it looks like on paper, at least in hindsight. I mean,
seriously. I wonder if they two were like, we're definitely trading him to the Western Conference because we don't want this.
That used to be a pretty prevalent thing. You don't trade in your division, you don't trade in your conference. I feel like that's less of a thing now. But, the Sharks organization they've never won a cup, but they had some really prolific years there with
Awesome
Marlowe,
teams.
Thornton, Pavelski, that whole crew. Now Thornton is housing Macklin Celebrini. He's a Hall of Famer. He's still very much part of that organization and sort of the fabric of what's going on in San Jose and I guess that part of California and the hockey vibe there. So, yeah, I mean, imagine he was a lifelong or career-long Bruin.
Yeah,
like,
who would Celebrini be living with? That's the
that's the real question here. The real what if.
A lot of Celebrini implications on these trade lists, which is crazy because these are so long ago. But we don't know if they even pick him, if they keep that Tim Stützle pick, Joe Thornton here. But no, I think if there's any better way to define why this is the most impactful trade in the NHL in the last 25 years, it's the only trade I believe, maybe way back in the archives of other sports, the only trade in American sports history where the MVP of that season has been traded in that season. That has never happened outside of Joe Thornton going from the Bruins to the Sharks. So
I wonder too. I know we talked like Boston ended up winning a cup, but do they win more if your center duo is Joe Thornton and Patrice Bergeron?
I imagine
for the
so.
next decade. Like maybe they win another. I know
One
they
would
went to
think.
2 more finals. Who knows?
It's insane. It's insane. But yeah, that wraps up our list. That's our top 10. So let us know in the comments if there's any that we missed outside of the honorable mentions. I'd be shocked because we really did. We did some combing through to find a bunch of these trades. But if you have any gripes with the list or whatnot, please feel free to let us know in the comments. This has been a really fun show. We're in a bit of a lull in the NHL right now, kind of waiting for the Olympics to come, little mid-season form for some of these teams. So we're going to spice it up. We spiced it up this week, and then next week I think we're going to aim to have some more fun and maybe do a little bit of draft of current players. So stay tuned for that next Tuesday. But for everyone that helped out with this episode today, for all the guys in the room, really appreciate it. This has been Top Shelf presented by Enterprise, and we'll see you next time.